Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechta Zevachim daf Kuf Chaf, which is the last daf in Masechta Zevachim, a hard one. We went through it, Baruch Hashem, but we're actually not on Chaf. We're not on the last daf. We're on Kuf Yud Testament Bays, and we are up to the Koyin. So we were just making a distinction in this very lengthy Mishnah, which is the only Mishnah in this parak, which takes up a significant amount of words, with regard to a distinction between Abama Gedoy and Abama Katana. Certain places, of course, Abama Katana, Abama Yochid is not allowed at all, in times of Beis HaMikdash, in time of Shiloh. However, in the times of Gilgal, as we said, Abama Katana was allowed. Also, Neve Givon was allowed. Now, there's some differences between them, and we already mentioned a few, namely that the requirement of smicha on an animal before the shechita is only in Gilgal, for example, on the Bama Gedoyla that was there, but not on a Bama Katana. Furthermore, the requirement of a kachi kadoshim, like for example, a chatas on an oila and asham, has to be shechted in the north. That's only by that. Now, the koyin. Also, the requirement of a koyin is only by a Bama Gedoyel, but not by a private altar. Dechsev v'zarka koyin. Big day shadis, that he obviously, l'sharis b'kodesh, obviously if it's a non-koyin can do it, so obviously you don't need big day kodesh. But kli shadis, a kli sharis is only required by the Bama Gedoyel, asher yirshu subam b'kodesh. Reach nechayach, in order to be able to have a very good aroma, when the carbon had to be roasted, first it had to be raw. It couldn't have been cooked in any way. It had to have been specifically roasted. And that's considered to be a reich nechayach. Dechsev reich nechayach la'Hashem. Mechitza b'damim dechsev ha'isa ha'sharis al chatzi ha'mizbeach. So again, when it comes to the requirement of the blood applications, in which there was the chuta sikra in the middle of the mizbeach, and the oil's blood was on the bottom, below the chuta sikra. The chatos was above. The oil's oaf was pumpakert. The blood application of the oil bird was on the top, and the chatos oaf was on the bottom. Now that requirement is only when it came to the Bama Gedoyla. There was no requirement when it came to the blood applications that it had to be above or below. Like we also said, when it comes to, for example, a chatas, in which we require 4 blood applications on the 4 kronos, but that's only by Bama Gedol. By Bama Katana, Bama Shachid, only needed is 1 blood application, as we saw in yesterday's daf. So, how do we know this? Again, we're going to go back to that soon. Only those who are makriv on the Mizbeach, which is referring to a Bama Gedoyla, has to wash their hands and feet first. So, now we're going to be introduced to this interesting shita of Rami Bar Chama. He says, Lo shanu, the only time that we say that there's a distinction, whether or not it has to be above or below the Chuta Sikra in the Mizbeach, is Ela B'Kanshe Bama Katana. If, let's say, you're a makdashit with the intention to be makrivit on the Bama Katana, Vikrivam B'Bama Katana, and you paka did it in the Bama Katana. You were intending to do it that way, and that's actually what happened. Avol, because you Bama Katana. Let's say your intention was to be makdashit on the Bama Katana. However, the Kervinhu B'Bama Gedoyla yesh chitzoi. If at the end of the day you ended up bringing that carbon, which you were thinking originally was going to do outside, you know what? I'm already by Novin Givain, I might as well do it. So there is a requirement, depending on, again, if it's a chatas or an oila, whether or not the dam should be sprinkled above or below the chuta sikra. Okay, so Moisev Rabba. So he asks a question. When it comes to chaz v'shaik utrumas lachmi taida, when it comes to these items, in which were matnas kahuna, as well as the gift of the lechem, of the carbon taida, the 40 breads, no hangim mikachi bama gedoyla, then no hangim mikachi bama katana. It's only noyig by the bama gedoyla, not the bama katana. So what? So then Rashi first of all says why, because it says that Tanuf was Lashem. Bikomakom bebama gedoyla isnahu. These apply only by bama gedoyla. The afil bekadshi bama katana v'hodin lukuhu. So how do we understand this? It's apparently also by one who is makdishit on a bama katana, and you ended up being makravit on a bama gedoyla. Maybe we should say in chitzui. So aimino hagen bama gedoyla, aimino hagen bama katana. No. It's only nogen bama gedoyla, but not a bama katana. It's fine. So you can have me amar amar chameloshan over kache bama gedoyla. The only time you have to put it on above or below is where your intention was to put it on the bama gedoyla, and you actually did. Of a kache bama katana, if your intention was kache bama katana, afal gav dekriven bama gedoyla in chitzui. So this is actually the other way around. So it's the second lashon is saying that no, if your intention was for it to be on a bama katana, but you end up being makar on a bama gedoyla, then in chitzui. So I'm silently chaz v'sher chumas lachmi toina no hagam b'kachi bama gedoyla v'ino hagam b'kachi bama katana aim no hagam bama gedoyla v'ino hagam bama katana. So you can say it the other way around. Okay, so it's not say Raya pleaded Rebbe Lezer, the Rebbe Lezer, Aylas bamas yachid. When it comes to a bama of a yachid, shechnisa bifnim, that's brought inside, right? This carbon is brought inside, called tua machitzois, the whole davar. So those walls accepted it for all matters, which means that even though your intention was for it to be on the outside, once it's brought inside, we say yesh chitzui, which is like the first interpretation, the first lashon, not the second. So Ibarav Zera, oil is bamas yachid. When it comes to, again, bringing a carbon initially for the outside, as we can kufchaf, shachnis lifnim, it's brought back, it's brought in, and then v'hoitziel chutz, it's brought out again. So we said if it's brought in, the walls absorb it, and therefore there's a din of chitzui. But what happens if it was brought in, then was brought out afterwards? Now, do we say kivan dialo, once it was brought in, sen kaltula machitzasa, then it's considered like the machitzas have absorbed it, and therefore it should have all the dinim of the of a bama gedoyla. Says Rashi, mi noig badin kachi bama gedoyla toin chumas chaz v'shoyik v'serach lachzir lefnim. Then now the fact is, once it was inside, you have to bring it back in, even though it was brought out again. So, Dilma keeping the hadar. No, once you took it out, it's okay, and you could just bring it outside, and there's no longer a requirement of Trumas Chaz V'Shait. So, Lav had to pull to the Rav Yosef. This dispute, this question, seems to really be based similar to the following. Did none. Now, of course, as we said multiple times, including in the famous parak that we saw Yizman Kaiman, that Kachi Kadashim are supposed to be shechted in the north of the Azara. But what happens when shechted in the south? So we say Mu'alan Behen. There's a din Me'ila, says Rashi. V'om Rinan, we don't say it's Keman Dechan Kinoin Dami. So like you strangled it. V'havelu Kikanshim Shimesu, it's like a carbon that died. The Yatsimidi Me'ila, that it no longer has the status of Me'ila. We don't say that. We say there's still a din Me'ila on it, even though you did shecht it, but you just shecht in the wrong place. So there's still a din Me'ila. The Imolu Yardu, however, if you brought it up on the Mizbeach, the sacrificial parts, you're not going to bring it down. The Iboilu, and this is the question. Yardu Mahu Shialu. Let's say it went down, can you bring it back up? So Rabbi Omer Lo Yalu, Rabbi Yosef Omer Yalu. So the question is, once it was already up, so maybe it took upon itself that it should stay there. Once it's down, maybe you're not supposed to put it back up again. So Tiboilu Rabbi, Tiboilu Rabbi Yosef. Tiboilu Rabbi, Kano Kama Rabbi, Elba Mizbeach, Dechazile Mikdosh. Maybe it's only by the Mizbeach. Something which is fit for it could be Makadish it. Doloi Chazilo Makadish. So when it comes to this carbon, it was fit to have been brought. It was just not shechted in the right place. So therefore, maybe the mizbech will sanctify it, and therefore you have to put it back up again. Of a mechitza, maybe we should say that it does accept it. Of a hacha, the German kaimais who low. Maybe there's a distinction between one place, which is the azara, as opposed to going back and forth, two places. The English is pretty simple to Rabba. B'chad Gisa on one side, Rav Yosef b'chad Gisa. Miboyle Rabbi Yanai, the boy Rabbi Yanai, Yivrei Oilois, Bomas Yachin, Shalom Mizbech, V'yardu Mahu. If let's say you have the limbs of the carbon of a Bomas Yachin that went up onto the Mizbech and went back down, what's the din? Tehechadalo, Moshel Behena or Lo Tiboylach. If the fire didn't catch on to it, there's nothing to talk about. They're not going to put it back on. Kiti boilach hecha dimoshu behena or my teku. If let's say the fire did catch hold of it, so then maybe the din is different. Now we're not sure that we end up with a teku. Question 13. Mahu hadin depshitale lo rabba b'chad gisa Rav Yosef b'chad gisa Rav Yani miboy. So when it comes to the limbs of an oil on a bamas yachid that was put onto the mizbeach. So the question is, Rabbi says yardu, Rav Yosef says lor yardu. Whether you should take it down or not, that's the question. Itmar, shchitas laila bebamas yachid. Is a person allowed, just new question, to be able to do the shchita at night? Now we know you're not supposed to do shchita at night, do the avoda at night, outside of burning the ivarim padarim, the fats in the limbs, from the previous day. But otherwise, there's not really much avoda that goes on in the Beis Mikdash at night, with some small exceptions. So how about when it comes to Bomas Yachid? So Rabbi Shmuel Chada Eimer Ksher Chada Mepsul. Because Miflagi Rabbi Lezer Rami Kroy, he had said a contradiction of psukim. There's a Rami Kroy Hadadi Ksiv. On one hand, the pasuk says regarding a Bama Katana, and this is in Sefer Shmuel Aleph, it says V'agidu l'Shaul Lamor. It was told to Shaul, who was a king, Hini ha'am chaitim, they're sinning, V'echol al hadam, V'yomer bigantem goli lahayim even gedayla, that he should prepare like this big stone. Okay, so what does it mean? He wanted him to build a Bamas Yachid, and it says, do it hayoim, do it today. Mashma, it must be that these traders who are doing something wrong, we should bring a carbon today. But it's got to be during the day. Yet it also says, basically, the next pasuk, Putzu ba'am, spread out the nation, V'yamartim lahem, and say to them, Hagishu elai, come bring to me ish shoroiv, ish sehu, bring an ox, a sheep, ushchatem bazeh, and do the shchita, v'yachaltem, and eat it. And then v'loi sechatu Hashem, you should not sin to Hashem. Lechal adam, to eat together with the blood. V'yagishu kol am ish shaydai biyado halayla, that they did it at night. V'yishchatu sham, and they shechted it there. So you could say, well, they were wrong, but how is this acceptable? Apparently, it's pretty clear that it was allowed to be done not just during the day, but even at night. So that's the steering psukim by Shaul. So Mar Mishani kan b'chulin kan b'kodshim. It's a partial answer. If we're talking about chulin taki, you can shecht anytime, day or night, if you want to have something to eat. But for carbon, no. When it comes to carbon, the taka has to be only during the day. Mar Mishani kan b'kodshe bama gedoyla v'kan b'kodshe bama katana. No. Maybe that's the distinction. When it comes to a Bama Gedoyla, it has to be only during the day. But by Bamas Yachid, Bama Katana, maybe could even be done at night. Okay. Question 14. Ma tirutz Rabbi Shmuel stiras hamikrois bebama de shaul de mikrechad matzrech yoim v'yidach machshir layla. So one says he machshir chulin, but kachim is not allowed to be shechted at night. Or it's the distinction between a bama katana, which is allowed, and a bama gedola, which cannot be done at night. Okay. Fine. Okay. So, be'elu devarim pligi amaroi inu hagin bebamas yachid. So this is going to be part of the answer, which is TA10. It's also going to be TB13. This one is shchitas laila bebamas yachid. Okay, that's going to definitely be one answer, but we're not done. We have a couple other answers, so this is 1 point. So let's just look over here. Shchitas Laila Babamas Yachid. So this is TA 10 and TB 13. Okay, TA. So that's one question. Okay, and so Machlokes Amar. Oilus Bamas Yachid. When it comes to bringing of a carbon oil, Rabbi ain't to an Hashem netuach. So there's a Machlokes whether you need Hashem netuach. Do you need to skin and remove the various limbs when it comes to Bamas Yachid, like a Bamas Gedolah? So he says over here that you do not need to do so. Rabbi Yochanan Emer Te'una Hefshin V'Netuach. Okay, so that is also, again, that's going to be the second question. Hefshit V'Netuyach. Okay. All right. Fine. The Kamifagi Rav Yosef Galili. The sign of Rav Yosef Galili, so Rav Yosef Galili says, Oyla Shekrivi Yisrael b'Midbar, when it came to a carbon in which the Bnei Yisrael brought in the Midbar, and Tuna Hefshin V'Netuach. There was no Hefshin V'Netuach in the Midbar, and therefore it's also not by Bamas Yachid. Shein Hefshin V'Netuach El Oil Moyed V'Elech. It's only from the time of the Mishkan on. Mar Savar Oil Moed Elech Loshna Bamas Gadol Bama Katana. There's mashma even a Bama Katana requires. And Mar Savar Bama Gadol in Bama Katana Loy. Tani Kabas Rav Yochanan. Devarim Shebein Bama Gadol Bama Katana. What are some of the distinctions? Keren, the requirement of having the kranais on the top of the mizbeach, the four corners. The kevesh, and having a ramp. The asoid, which is one of the levels, the foundational, the rebua, b'bama gedolah, has to be square. Vein kerem you said becomes everywhere b'bama katana. Kir v'kanoi, when it comes to the laver, when it comes to the basin and the washing station, is b'bama gedolah vein kir v'kan b'bama katana. Chaz v'shaik b'bama gedolah vein chaz v'shaik b'bama katana. There's no din of these parts of the chaz v'shaik. Devarim shishvasan, there are ways in which they're the same. B'bama gedolah b'bama katana, shchita, b'bama gedolah v'katana. Obviously, you have to do shchita. Obviously, you can't just electrocute it. It's got to be done properly. Hashem netuach b'gedolah v'katana. So over here, clearly, we find the shita that Hashem netuach is done by gedolah, which we know, but even by katana. Dam mater mafalig. When it comes to when you do the zrikas adam, that matters you to be able to eat the meat. And also there's a din pigel, as we will learn soon. But again, pigel is having an improper machshava, begedolah uvekatana. Mumin, when it comes to a carbon which has some type of blemish, vizman, and the time to eat it, begedolah vekatana, also applies to a katana. We don't find anywhere that you can bring a carbon which is a balmum on a bamas yachid. Avol noiser v'tamei zman v'tamei shom zubazeh. When it comes to noiser zman of eating, as we already said, and someone who's tamei or the carbon is tamei, they're the same. How do we know that there's a time for eating for whatever the time restrictions are of a particular carbon is the same by a bama katana and a bama gadol is the same? So Amr Torah, the pasuk says lon yisaref. It says lon, when it's left overnight, it needs to be burnt. Upigol yisraf, and also pigol needs to be burned. Ma pigol pasul bibama aflon pasul bibama. Maybe look at it differently. The Amr Torah lon yisraf yaitse yisaref. We know that if it's left overnight, it has to be burned, right? Nicer is burned. But also if it leaves outside, it's supposed to be burned. Ma yaitse kasha bibama avlon kasha bibama. We know there's no din yaitse because the whole notion of a bamas yachid is it's outside, right? So there's no din yaitse. So just like there's no din yaitse about bamas yachid, maybe there's no din of iser lina either. So again, we know it's a davar pashit. Obviously yaitse, there's no din, there's no iser of yaitse when it comes to a bama katana. That doesn't make sense because it's outside anyway. And we already also know that pigel is a problem. The question is, how about zman? So the question is, what do you compare it to? So my yaitze kasha bama avlon kasha bama v'lav kavachaymer hu ma'oifus. Maybe we should learn out the kavachaymer that zman can passel it, as we see from birds. As we turn to the very last time, we're going to turn the page. Ma'oifai she'ein hamum poisel behen. When it comes to an oath, we know it says in Thomas v'zachras ba'oifus. There's no din of what it has to be a male, like a carbon oil. When it comes to an oath, we're much more lenient. And also when it comes to a blemish, the only thing that is a problem on oath if it's mechusar aver, if it's missing a limb. However, an oif could be a balmum, and you can be a makar of it. She'ein hamum poisel behen. Nonetheless, zman poisel behen. There's still an isser of psul. So kachi bava katana shamum poisel behen ne'enu den shezman poisel behen. So when it comes to a bava katana, again, when it comes to a mum, it doesn't make any difference. If it's an animal which is a balmum, you can't bring even a bava tzayachid. So then certainly it should be an isser zman. So no, but maybe cannot learn from oifus. Malu oifus shechein ein hazar kasher behen. Tamer b'bava katana shazar kasher ba. Maybe you can't compare it to oifus because you're saying oifus we're more lenient. It's not true necessarily, because when it comes to an oif, you can't be a non-kohen can't be makriv an oif in the base of mikdash, right? So maybe that's the reason why Tamer b'bava katana shazar kasher ba. Lo yehezman possible. So maybe just like a non-kohen can do the avoda on a bamas yachid, so maybe there's no psul zman. Talmud Leimer, the pasuk says, "V'zayis taris zevach hashlamim, v'lasay zman bamas katana k'zman bama gedoyle." To be able to tell you that it has the same din. Okay, obviously we're going to stop there, and that's basically where we end. Elu devar pliga maroi inohagin b'bamas yachid. And it's interesting, TA10, that's the question. It's shchitas lail and hefshin letuach. And over here, be'elu devar pliga maroi. Okay, it's the same thing. And shchitas laila b'bama shachid or heshem nituach, and that is it. Hanulach payres chatas aslikul masechtas zvachim. Hanulach paras chatas aslikul masechtas zvachim. Hanulach paras chatas aslikul masechtas zvachim. We Baruch Hashem finish this masechta. Mazel tov. We're going to continue tomorrow with masechtas menachos. Ad kan.